Hello everybody, this is Daniel Spence with Team 1. Team 1 consists of Cassie Chin, Daniel Spence, and Brent Sutcliffe. Today we're going to show you a video that's going to show you the code, going to run you through our program, show you the ins and outs. So let's go ahead and get started. Here we imported the decimal format package. We're going to use this to display our results from after calculating the powers. Here is we imported the scanner utility. We're going to use that to accept user input. Here is our main method, and it's actually pretty simple. It's just a do while loop, and what it says is calculate powers method, which we use to calculate our powers and to display all that information, and accepts two arguments, which is input base and input power. And both these methods return an integer value. And the condition here for the while is get command, and it returns a Boolean value. Now if we take a look at get command, which is right here, what it is it's a while loop, and it's set to true because we just want it to loop. There's no condition to really be evaluated. And it prompts the user for do you want to continue, yes or no, and then it reads what they put in, stores that into a string variable called C, and then we evaluate that variable to see if it equals Y. Then if it is, then returns true, and then the program keeps going. It starts over again. But if it's N, then what it does is it gives this little exit message, returns false, and then the program ends. So let's go ahead and take a look at the methods that we use to actually return the integer values for calculating the powers. This is input base, and here we have an integer variable called base, an integer variable called error count, which is our counter variable. And then we use a for loop to control the number of attempts. And here we have error count to 0. As long as attempts doesn't exceed 3, then for each time increment error count by 1. And so what happens when we go into this loop, it prompts the user to enter in a number between 1 and 99. And then it takes that, it looks for it, and then it uses this input number method to validate and give this base variable its value. And what the input number method is, so after it prompts you here to enter in a number, here's where it actually reads the number. And what happens is it says if the input is a integer, if it is not, then it will return an error, which is actually a constant value of -1. But if it's not, then it just stores that value into an integer variable and then returns that value here, which then gets stored in this other integer variable called base. Now, if it does end up being returning, if the input is not a integer, then it will return a value of -1, which doesn't really make sense until you look here, where it checks to see if values are in a range, and our range is between 1 and 99. So if it returns a value of -1, obviously that's not in that range, so it goes to this else statement here and says input not in range, and we can actually see that here in our input. Input not in range, input not in range. But if we actually put in an integer between those two numbers, then it actually accepts it. So next we'll go into our input power. And here we wanted to show that you could do this in different ways. There's different approaches, and you could actually you didn't have to do a for loop here. And in here we did a do while loop. So once again, we have a integer variable called power, and then we have an integer variable called attempts, and this is actually set to 3 because we're going to de-increment the value. And here is our do while loop, and basically what it says is it prompts the user to enter an integer between 1 and 10. Then we use the input number method again to return a value to this variable, and then we evaluate that variable to see if it's in a range, and if it is, then we return it, and if not, we say input is not in range, and then we de-increment the attempts. And if our attempts gets down to 0, then get an error message here saying you've exceeded the number of attempts and goodbye. We can actually see that in action where you've exceeded the maximum number of attempts, goodbye. But once again, if we actually put in a variable that's within range, then it returns all those values, which there is a lot. So let's go ahead and go to the calculate powers. So after those two methods get their input, they pass those values here to calculate powers, which accepts two integer values, which one will be called base, the other one's called exponent. Then we have two other integer variables here, one's x and one's n. And in math, typically the base is referred to x and the exponent is referred to n. And we have a double for result. And you have to have a double because it is the only primitive value type that has enough characters to display all the output. And you can see here there's a lot of characters. So you have to use double. And then we create a decimal formatting object to apply. So, because when you do these calculations, if you didn't have this decimal formatting object, it returns it in scientific notation, and we didn't want that. So we created a decimal formatting object, then we said, decimal formatting object, we want you to have 0 fraction digits. So it forces it to return it in a format like this. And then for the main calculations, it's actually pretty simple. It's 2 for loops, one's nested in the other one. And what it says is first we initialize both of those variables to 1. Then we limit x, its max value is base, and for n its max value is exponent. And then as long as those conditions are true, it will increment both those values. And just to kind of give you an idea what that means, we'll kind of back it up here. What it says is, so we set x to 1, and then it evaluates this condition, and then we go into the next part here. And it says n is 1, and then n is less than exponent, which we set to 10, and then increments. And so it sets those two values, and then we get the result here, where it calculates the power based on those two variables, and then prints out the answer. X to the power of n is decimal the df object formatted, and the result. It kind of looks like this. 1 to the power of 1 is 1. Then it increments the exponent variable, and it keeps going all the way till it gets to 10. And once it hits 10, we go back to this other for loop here, and then it increments that, and so we get to 2, and it does it over and over again until we get to 99, which is our base max limit, and then 99 to the 10th, which is our exponent max limit. And then after that, that method is done, and then it goes to return back up here, get command, do you want to continue? So then we have to decide, do we want to continue? What's kind of nice about this, it only will accept y or n, so we could do the, it doesn't matter what you hit, you could. So if you want to hit yes, you can do it all over again. And if you want to hit no, it gives you this nice little exit message. Thank you for using the table of powers. Goodbye. Well, I hope y'all liked our little video and you liked our program and the way we coded it. You know, looking forward to seeing everybody else's projects and what they did. This is Team 1. Thank you for watching, and y'all have a good day.